I got into this industry purely because I love games. In the movies, you just see scary imagery, but in games, you actually engage with the world.
Our game, in a word, it's survival horror. We are bringing survival horror back to its roots.
To me,
The Evil Within is about going back to pure survival horror. It's about creating a game that is challenging, scary, and visually compelling. It's interesting to imagine what the player's reaction is going to be to these elements.
I wouldn't say survival horror has peaked, but it's gone into a different direction. We're trying to bring it back to the original vision that we had.
Mikami-san always focuses on the user, what they'll think and how they will react.
Ever since I played Resident Evil 1, it's been my dream to work with Shinji Mikami. His thought process is very different from mine, but that's actually a good thing. That conflict leads to really creative things for The Evil Within.
Mikami-san does not care about schedules or limitations. Everything that needs to go into the game has to go in somehow.
This is my first time working with Shinji Mikami, and more than anything else, he has an aura. He describes that through your storytelling, you can get the player to come in closer and closer. Then you slap them. But that sort of knee-jerk reaction from a horror standpoint isn't the best approach. What you really want to do is be fair to the player and look at it from their perspective. That has really had an effect on how I write.
Mikami-san is very specific with what he looks for in games. Just to illustrate that, at one point there was a very visual effect heavy scene I was responsible for, and he spent 2 days sitting at my desk overseeing every minute detail. That's really one of the great qualities of Mikami-san, that he's willing to help someone become the game designer that they want to be.
I've worked with Shinji for over 10 years. He has a very unusual approach to how he makes games. He doesn't simply decide everything and tell people what to do. He has the staff come up with what do they want, what do they think is appropriate, what do they like. From that, he creates the foundation for his vision and design. It's the kind of environment that only someone like Shinji Mikami can pull off, and that's really what we're seeing with the production of The Evil Within.
Mikami-san really holds the player's viewpoint as paramount when he's making a game. Fear is important, but intuitiveness and directness is more important. Exploring that element is really what leads to the scariest experiences in the game.
We focus on coming up with something that's going to please and surprise Mikami-san. Ultimately, the end user is most important. For Mikami-san, that is first and foremost. For us, though, the first thing we have to do is satisfy him with everything we put in the game. But it really comes down to focusing on what is going to scare the user.
The first game I made was a quiz game for the original Game Boy. I had to make it in 3 months, and I had no idea how I was going to do that, but I had passion. Now with The Evil Within, I have a lot of know-how, but it's still a struggle, so it hasn't really changed much. If I am successful or not really isn't important to me. The important thing is I can continue to work on games that I love.